Tell us about the Seat Next to the King.
Seat Next to the King. It had a huge success at the Fringe Festival, which I'm never here for, unfortunately. But luckily, it's being remounted. It's written by Stephen Elliott Jackson. Two strangers meet in a men's washroom in Washington, D.C. Bayard is black, gay, and works for Martin Luther King, based on a real fella. Mm-hmm. Walter is white, gay, but denies it, married, and works in the Johnson White House, also based on a true story. But he is drawn to men's bathrooms in order to satisfy his desire for same-sex sex. Okay? It's dangerous considering the climate towards gays then. Stephen Elliott Jackson has a keen ear for the language of the times in America. They talk about their past experiences, both good and bad. You know, you slowly realize when this is taking place. You can't tell by the costumes. But you're hearing somebody referred to as a Negro, or a black man. You don't hear colored, you don't hear man of color, but you're getting these little clues. I thought that was interesting. Politics are discussed, the sense of the times towards gender politics and a sense of belonging come through in this play slowly, quite wonderfully, yeah.
How's the production?
It's terrific. It is terrific. Tanisha Tate directs this, as she did for The Fringe, and she is a lovely mix of sensitivity and muscularity. The relationships are established beautifully by the two actors. Kwaku Okiere plays Bayard as a flamboyant, confident black man. He knows the tenor of the times and lives within its confines, and he's confident because of that. He has checked out that men's washroom and knows that Walter has been checking out the washroom too, so he knows Walter is ripe for engagement. Connor Ling plays Walter and is uptight, righteous, straight-laced, constricted, restricted, and in denial. Walter is just a tight knot of conflicts. I think Stephen Elliott Jackson has written a thoughtful, unsettling play about gay politics and how some embrace their sexuality and that others can't because of society's perception or fear of how it will affect their job or their family and other relationships. He doesn't give any neat, happy endings. He gives an ending that is true and gut-wrenching. If you didn't see this in The Fringe, you can see it now at the Theater Center.
Well, thanks, Lynn.
Pleasure.
That's Lynn Slotkin, a theater critic and passionate playgoer. You can read Lynn's blog at slotkinletter.com. The Seat Next to the King plays at the Theater Center until October 1, theatercenter.org. And this is CIOT Friday morning 89.5 FM. I'm Phil Taylor, the host. Of course, with me are Lynn Slotkin, a passion playgoer, and Phil Conlon, Classical Underground, Wednesday 6 to 8 p.m. And Phil and I both woke up when we realized we're talking about Bayard Rustin. Is it Rustin or Rushton?
Rustin. Bayard Rustin. And Walter is Walter Jenkins. That was also a very interesting story. Mm-hmm. Well, because J. Edgar Hoover got involved personally. And then
he didn't come to the washroom.
No, but he sent flowers to Jenkins. Jenkins was arrested and then taken to a hospital. And J. Edgar sent him a bouquet. And some reporters found that very interesting. And then dropped the story, probably because J. Edgar made some phone calls to
J. Edgar Hoover.
See, all of that, you know, it's surrounding subtext. Yeah. You could go and Google this kind of stuff. Yeah. But for the purposes of this play, it's quite wonderful. We are in this washroom looking at these two guys. Yeah. And initially, I thought for Walter, I thought about Angels in America. Kushner, Tony Kushner. And in that play, one of them, Walter, is a Republican. He's a Republican white man from, he's a Mormon, and he's gay, and he's married, and he cannot come to grips with the fact that he's gay. And his boss is a named Roy Cohen. Yeah. We know about him. So
also Republican.
Oh, yeah, well, on many other names, too.
Make sure we get to the Republican.
You know, reprehensible, rot gut. So the being constricted because you're gay and desperate desperate not to admit it. I saw the similarities here, but yes, the histories of these two men, Bayard and Walter, are in that washroom. You do find out that Bayard figures out that Walter worked in the White House. You know that
Certainly.
that Bayard worked for Martin Luther King and organized all the protests, organized all the marches, organized all sorts of things. So you see that tangentially. But what you're looking at is the desperation of two people trying to connect. And the confidence of Kwaku Okiere, isn't that a name to tap dance to? Kwaku Okiere has such confidence and flamboyance as Bayard because he knows what's going on in that washroom. He knows why the man is there. And so they have this flippant kind of conversation that goes forward.
That sounds very much like Bayard Rustin. He was the guy who knew, he had command of all the topics.
Yes.
And he was actually the organizer.
Right, he was the logistics guy for this,
Yes.
for that big
He
demonstration. He was the logistics person. He's the one who
Yes.
put the whole thing together.
Yeah. And they meet 18 years later in Texas. They meet
In Texas?
18 years
Be very
later
careful.
in the play. I mean, that's a 75-minute play, and it's really very tightly written. And you see how things have changed or not, and the sadness of it, the real sadness of it. Anyway, there you go. Theater is a wonderful thing.
Well, it is.
It reflects life.
It makes me wonder what the author knew and if there had ever been an encounter. Or it just seems like a great idea.
It's a great idea.
Two men close to power. Key. I mean, in both instances, King was very dependent upon Bayard Rustin. And, of course, Lyndon Johnson really needed Walter Jenkins. Lyndon got up in the morning and said, get Walter in here and find out what's going on today.
Yeah.
You know, and they would cross names out and put names in. Calls would get made, meetings held. Summaries would be written out, and Lyndon could go about his business. So these things are important. And both of them extremely vulnerable because your enemies are lurking, and they know if I can take that guy down, I can totally mess up the White House. I can totally mess up Martin Luther King. So, it's a great story. I think that certainly makes us all want to look into this more. This is CIOT Friday morning, 89.5 FM.